Thank you, Sharon, for setting this up, and thanks everyone for attending. Hopefully we will accomplish what you're wanting to do. The objectives that I sent out hopefully covered that. Um, Obviously, this is an interesting time when we are trying to communicate with each other as well as communicate with our customers, who are the people who visit our various gardens or meetings. I'll start off by giving a little bit of my background. I don't have the agronomy degree that one would expect. I do not have the horticulture degree. I do have 2 business degrees, however, and I do have a history of communicating scientific information. I was in the pharmaceutical industry in sales and marketing and training for 33 years, and I now have left that and using those skills now to try to more broadly communicate scientific information as a master gardener. It is something I'm really passionate about. I'm continuing to learn. Right now, I am a mile wide and an inch deep, and I'm hoping to continue to grow in that. But I've had gardening experience since I was about 6, and I've been a geek my whole life. So I do think I'm somewhat qualified to talk about this subject. And that is, how do we advance the technology we have available for us to more effectively communicate? And once again, I was in the training department for a number of years. So if I put together a workshop that didn't have objectives, I would immediately be sent back to put on the objectives. So what we want to do here is to better understand this QR code technology. You may have seen it already out there in the real world. Hopefully you're seeing more of it. Rationale for why we are wanting to include it more in our activities as master gardeners, about how can we increase our outreach, and not only in terms of our impact, but our consistency. I'm also going to show what we've been doing here in Douglas County already with respect to plant labels and some of the other things, and give you the tools that are necessary to do this in your home office so that you could then duplicate our activities as well as create activities of your own. All right. Every organization we want to, gone too far. Start with why are we here? Why are we doing what we're doing? Because ultimately that drives our activity. And our mission as master gardeners is to engage and hopefully inspire the community to want to learn more about gardening, about horticultural information, and importantly, from our perspective as master gardeners, is to share research-based horticultural information. The internet is full of all kinds of old wives' tales and home remedies and great ideas that have never been proven. Quite honestly, many of them are contradictory and detrimental to good gardening practices. Our job is to share that information. In the Douglas County, one of our missions as well is to demonstrate sustainable practices. And by sustainable, we mean reduce waste. We mean think about the next generations and what are we leaving for them? Are we using our resources appropriately and in a sustainable way so that there is something here for them, and that we leave ideally with the planet in a better place than we received it when we were born. I don't know if we've done that yet as a society, but certainly as master gardeners we can. So whether or not it's saving water or using less herbicides and pesticides or saving paper, it's an opportunity to be more sustainable. Now we do this through the demonstration gardens that we have. I've got several examples here we have in Douglas County in our fairgrounds. The medicinal garden is in the lower left corner, Tom Swan down in Baldwin City. These are places for us to engage with the public. And the solution that we have to deliver on this mission is these people. Ideally, this would be the solution we would have for all of our engagements with the community. A master gardener there at the gardens or there on the hotline answering all those questions. Ideally, we'd have Ward Upham in the upper left corner cloned at all these facilities, and he would just be there to answer all the questions, or a hologram of Ward. it's not a solution that is feasible thus far. The solutions we do have are these. When we're not there in the gardens to answer questions, we have to kind of guess at what people want and offer up the information, the solution. It's the standard little plant tags that we see throughout every garden. It's the more thorough, hard signs that we have in our demonstration garden at the fairgrounds that do a little more engagement of the public to help them understand more about what they're looking at. The problem with our current solutions is this, and this is part of the reason I came up with this. I first was thinking about QR codes at our garden show 2 years ago, and we were talking about what would we want to have available for handouts. And I'm going, man, you know, I watched in the pharmaceutical industry, people would come and they'd come to these big events, they'd collect all this paper, and then they'd go home and throw it away. And I knew that was going to happen as well. So I said, you know, maybe we could have a few, but I teach people that all these sources are online. And if you just took a picture of this QR code or opened your camera and scanned it, it would be available for you and you could print it if you wanted it. If you didn't, it went away. No waste. I then went over to Monarch Watch where I'm faced with this view. And Monarch Watch is an incredible garden with a tremendous diversity of plants. And I'm going, okay, which one's the weed I'm supposed to be pulling here? And I see there's 8 signs in this little space. Which one is which? As I said, I'm not a longtime master gardener. It was a real challenge. So the question became, how do we be better at identifying these plants? What information was missing? I said, you know, what would be really nice is if I knew what the regular name was, and that's on the tag of the Latin name, yeah, but I'd love to know what the leaf looked like so that I don't pull the wrong one because it's not in flower right now. And ultimately, I'd love to know what the flower is going to look like. The problem we face with wanting all that kind of information is, first of all, our resources are limited. We all know that the time and effort we put into raising funds to increase or expand or increase the depth of our signage. The existing ones have a very limited space. They get to be crowded. Frequently, the interest is there only when things are in bloom. Names are difficult to remember, so you see people out there, and actually they're getting much better. They will take pictures of those little signs versus hand paper or try to remember what the name of that strange Latin one was that they loved in the garden. We also see that information is changing all the time. And once again, our resources are very limited. So the solution I came up with was driven by this opportunity with the QR code. And I wanted to start out because everyone says, well, not everyone owns a smartphone. And you're right. Not everyone owns a smartphone, but right now, 81% of Americans own a smartphone. And the fact is that the younger generation, as we would expect, are more likely to own that device, but even the 65 and older crowd, more than half of them own a smartphone. And if we're thinking about our audience and we're thinking about the next generation, we got to ask ourselves not about the 65 and older, but about the younger, the people we're trying to influence now with the information that we have. And that opportunity, to me, just screams great. Let's find a way to take advantage of the fact that almost everyone, when they visit our gardens, has this computer in their hands. And this computer that go a long way to increasing our ability to communicate. The other major event that drove me is, once again, it was prior to the garden show 2 years ago. It was Apple wrote into their operating software the ability for the camera to open up and automatically recognize a QR code. You don't have to, if you have an Apple iPhone or you actually have a new generation Android phone, because Google and Apple are constantly trying to keep up with each other. Anyone who's got the more recent Google software or any iPhone, because iPhones require you to update your software, all you have to do is open your camera and hover it over a QR code, and that QR code will connect you to a link. What does it link to? Look at all the choices. It's not just websites. It's messages, it's YouTube videos, it's Dropbox files, it's phone numbers, it's business card information. Anything really that you can digitize is a QR code. Anyone want to see how that works? Let's do this. I'm going to change my screen now. So bear with me and do another one. Because I've had a bunch of people ask me how this works. This is my phone. I'll show you this. So Sharon, can you monitor? Are you still seeing my phone?
Yes, we're seeing
Okay.
your phone.
And you see what I'm seeing on the phone, because I've toggled over to the PowerPoint presentation. You'll see that when the camera recognizes a QR code, a notification drops from the top of the screen. And that's how I've got my phone set up. The notification may come from the bottom of your screen. I'm not sure how it's going to show up, but that is the link. And in this case, the link is my contact information. That's just one of the examples that we've saw on the previous slide of the stuff that you can have in a QR code. And if I were to download this, the phone would recognize it as a what they call a VCF card, and I'd be able to add it to my contacts. So you should be back to my big screen, right?
Yes, the one with the plant labels on it is where we are.
Okay. So this is the first real iteration of our work with QR codes and our trying to communicate more effectively in our demonstration gardens. It is recognizing that the average person, and I consider myself very average, wanted to see not just the flower and the name or the name of the plant, but ideally, what does this flower look like? As I said early on, I want to know what's the leaf look like so I don't pull the wrong thing. And that can be easily communicated in this kind of label. And this is a card that's about 3.5 by 5 that we then laminate and put out into our gardens. And you'll notice there is a bunch of information already on the label, much like we had before, but a little bit more. So how do we read that? Let us. There's the evolution, and the first ones that I generated were not like this. That it is hopefully getting better over time. But when a person walks into our gardens, they are greeted with this label on some of the plants. And it's important to say we don't put them all out all the time because it would be a field of little flags. But as things come into flower or things we want to highlight, that's when we choose to put out one of these next generation labels. And as you'll see, the standard Latin name is given, the common names are given, a QR code that will take them to the Missouri Botanical Garden website, and whether or not it's an annual, a perennial, or what we call a tender perennial, which is dependent upon the particular microclimate that a gardener may have in their space. You'll notice on the screen to the right, or the picture to the right, we have this standard label. What you can't really see other than there's 2 black squares there, those are Velcro. And we just leave those on all the time. And on the back of our next generation labels is the other side of the Velcro. And as things come into flower, or as we want to highlight things, we go out and Velcro it onto the sign. And then when their show is done, we will then go ahead and remove it And likewise, at the end of the season, we will remove them all to reduce the weathering that happens. The other thing that people are greeted with is a traditional sign where we just talks about how can you get more from these labels that are out here. And these signs, what want more info on your plants you see, look for these QR codes and use your smartphone. And a little bit of direction on how to do that. As you see to the picture to the right, there is that sign, as well as a couple of the next generation labels that hopefully the visitors are finding more engaging. Because we're capturing these electronically, duplicating them is no big deal. You just forward over the electronic files. It also would allow for indexing. And if you had someone who was starting up a new demonstration gardens that was a xeriscaped focused garden, you could collect the xeriscaped plants that you would want in that garden, send over the file with the next generation labels, as well as the list of plants. You could turn that list into a document that a visitor could come in and see, you know, this is the list of the plants in this garden, and below is the QR code that'll take you to the file that's stored online. You can have then the list of all the plants in here. And as they went around to particular ones, they would see the connected link at the Missouri Botanical Gardens. Likewise, you'll see to the right, this is the K-State Veggie Garden Calendar, a tremendous resource that I would love to be able to hand out to every person who's considering vegetable gardening. I don't want to generate all that paper. Mm-hmm. So anyone who's got their smartphone handy, hover it over that QR code. It will take you to that document. And it's there for you to print out if you want, or to store on your phone or on your computer and reference when you need it. No paper involved. The home screen of your computer or your phone, right. You just open up the camera app. This was the advent of Apple writing it into the software. We didn't have to worry about downloading a new app. It automatically, through the camera, recognizes that QR code. And here's another good example. There's the document, Vegetable Garden Planting Guide.
So you don't have to click on anything. If you just aim it at that QR code, the other thing automatically appears?
Yes. The camera recognizes this is a QR code and offers you the link.
Okay.
Your phone.
So then you have to click on the link.
Yes, you then click on the link and it takes you there.
Okay, thank you.
So the plant tags are one thing, and as I indicated, our goal is to be more sustainable. So, and to help our target audience to get the most of their experiences. These are some other ways. Last year we had our 2020 home tour, and while a few of the gardens were here in town, others were well away. So what we did was we took Google Maps directions and put them in the form of QR codes, knowing that 81% of the population has a smartphone. All they had to do when they wanted to go to the next garden was to hover over the icon next to that map location. Their Maps app then brought up the directions and they just pushed go, if they knew enough to do that. Now I recognize not everyone knows, but the more these things are used, the more likely are people to take advantage of it. The other example I'm providing here is the Kansas Garden Guide, a great document that K-State has produced, 80 pages, color. I'd love everyone to have access to that. And yet, can you justify printing all those up and just handing them out? I don't think so. It's not sustainable. Having this as a QR code takes you right to the website. Another example, and I was pleased to see her in the room. Did you know Cassie Holman does YouTube videos? she's got one posted out there on, this particular one is on tomato gardening in north central Kansas. And some of the challenges that gardeners face and the diseases. Sometimes a video is the best way to communicate. Once again, you can create that document, have the QR code made available to anyone who wants that further information. And a lot of how-tos, the best way is a YouTube video. I see YouTube as the apprenticeship for the 21st century. And there's some amazing people with incredible talents out there willing to give it all to us. We just have to go learn it on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions?
Kevin, there's a bit of a discussion on the chat about what happens if you have an older phone.
Right.
If you have an older phone, first of all, as I said, iPhones require you to download the software updates. And so if you have an iPhone, you're good to go. If you have an older Android phone, there are a number of free QR apps.
Yes.
You just need to download one of those and it will do the same thing that Apple and the newer generations of the Android phones have built into the software. You wouldn't open up the camera, you would open up that app,
Mm-hmm.
and then the app would recognize that you give access to the camera through the app. And that was part of the challenge that made people reluctant in the past to use these. That reluctance I see is rapidly going away, particularly as people find useful information. I will tell you, you know, when you get a new smart, for example, or a new smart device, take built into a QR code and you just open up your phone and it takes you to the website and you click, 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 and it's all done for you. More and more people are going to be going this way, and we have an opportunity to be, I won't say on the cutting edge, because this honestly has been around since the early 90s, but ahead of the majority of people.
Sweet.
Other questions? 11 in the chat.
That's it for the chat box.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Oh, Kevin, there's one came in. Earlier, you mentioned the vast array of sites QR can link. How would we control which research-based sites our QR would link to?
All right. That's probably a good transition into what does this look like in practice? So I'll first go back to escape from this presentation. And what you all are seeing, are you still seeing my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this is a deck that I put together with Tom Swan. And I use PowerPoint just because of PowerPoint's capacity to manipulate all the things that we're interested in. Text and pictures and colors. If you don't have PowerPoint, you can do it in Word and other programs, whatever Google calls their open office option. Microsoft or Apple calls it Keynote, I think, but the activities are the same. I'm comfortable with PowerPoint, so that's what I use. And this is the group of labels that Tom Swan gardeners asked me to put together. And you'll see each of them have the same kind of information we've looked at already. I didn't highlight, I should, the fact that working in Monarch Watch, it became really important for us to recognize if you want, in this case, black swallowtail butterflies, you need to plant fennel or something else that is the host plant. And when that plant is covered with caterpillars, you need to leave them alone. You can't kill them, can't pick them off. Yes, they're eating that plant, that's their job. But that's how you get those butterflies. And if you love those butterflies, you gotta plant the host plants as well as the pollinator plants for them to come visit your garden. So those labels, as you see here, will have a picture of the host plant, a picture of the caterpillar, so you don't pick it off, and a picture of the butterfly. Generating new labels starts with a blank PowerPoint slide. I put a line in there. The blue line hash marks are to keep everything within the framework of the labels that or the cards that I'm ultimately going to print them off to. Avery makes a standard perforated card, 8.5 by 11, that is broken up into 4 cards. And if you stay within those margins, everything will stay on that card, which you can then laminate to put out in the garden. If I was to do a new one, what I like to do is I will copy, and that's I learned to right click when I taught new managers how to use their computers. I said the first thing you do is right click everything just to see what it does, because generally it's stuff you want to do. So I right click the existing name and I'll paste it and drag it over to the new box. And then I go hunting. I go to other websites. So here's our Pew Research. And this is the website that we chose to go with. A, because it's a great website that has a tremendous amount of information. B, the climate is close to what we offer. Yeah, it's a little warmer and a little more humidity, but in terms of major gardening-based websites, this I think is among the best. It is tended by master gardeners, so they're people that think the same way that we do. And it's got a tremendous number of research information. You'll see if you go to Gardens and Gardening, you'll see there's information on their master gardeners in St. Louis. You also see Plant Finder. If you go to the Plant Finder website, this is what you find. When you are, let's say we don't have a sign or a label yet for Virginia bluebells. And I will cheat because I don't know the Latin name, but I do know it begins with M, and I've already loaded it in, so I don't have to remember how to spell it. I will tell you, if you misspell it and you search, it will not find it. So you're better off in that case maybe going to Google and misspelling in Google, because Google does a better job of guessing what you wanted to say. But if it's spelled correctly and you click search, it brings up Virginia bluebells. Mertensia virginica. And once again, there is all the information you would love for anyone visiting and saying, oh, I love that blue flower. What is it? Will it grow in my garden? Do I have to worry about it? When does it bloom? All of that information. How big does it get? It's all there. It's native to Missouri. In that case, it's probably native to eastern Kansas. And that then gives us the information we want. We would then click on that web page. So you see up in the menu, I have clicked on the menu bar, big long string of characters. Once again, I copy that. And now I need to make a QR code. This is the site I use. I found it, there's a bunch of free QR code generators out there, but this is the one I've landed on. I've been very pleased with what it provides. And here's that list of different data types. The website is pre-built so that if I was to click on contact details, it would give a different content. Well, I'll go ahead and show you. Here's the website URL. The content, as you see, is just that. What's the website? If I was to click on my contact details, it gives different fields to fill in. And this one's already pre-populated because as you saw, I generated that QR code earlier. And it gives you the QR code. But let's go back to what we want in this case for the plant label, which is the website URL. I pasted it into the clipboard, I copied it into the clipboard. Now I'm going to paste it. If you will, look to the right over here, because you will see that change. Paste. And it is now changing. I choose the dynamic because it is a simpler QR picture. I'll go ahead and show you what static looks like. There's a real problem with that smudging or being printed such that it won't provide the information you're looking for. And you got the dynamic, it will look like that. Downloading that code in the Macintosh environment, it just pops up like this. In the Windows environment, it may go to your downloads page. And this is what it would show up like, in which case you would just copy that and open it with your either copy it or open it with your clipping software. Once again, in the Macintosh environment, it gives me the opportunity, once it's in preview, I just highlight it. I copy, and that one's and I'll go back to our PowerPoint and I will paste. So it comes in a little big. That's not a problem. I just drag the corner. And put it on back to the title. Now remember, this was not sumac. This is actually, I think the format I had was the Latin name was italicized and the other was not. So now I'll go back to my name. And sometimes you'll find the image that you want in the Missouri Botanical Gardens, in which case you can copy the image directly from there. What I frequently do is I'll go to Bing or Google, and I wanted to make sure everyone was still awake, so I wanted to put in something emotional. So every master gardener, this is either an ah or an ugh. For me, it's the latter. Put in the Latin name, which I know will get right, brings up your standard internet search, and I just click on images. And there you have a bunch of different choices. And you can grab one that's the flower, toggle back to your picture. And as I said, I like to provide the flower and the leaf. And sometimes it helps to actually type in you'll get a better picture of what the leaves look like. And once again, you can go in and choose whichever one you want. Now let's just grab one of the early ones. The name again is Mertensia virginica. I have to drop that down to 22. I now have a new label. That's the process. We then, once it's done, you save it as a PDF, and you save it as a PDF because that will lock in the formatting. If you don't and you move it to someone, you did it in Google's Office Suite and you now are using it on a Mac that's using Keynote, everything's going to be jumbled. If you save it to PDF, A, the formatting will remain the same. B, you'll be able to cut and paste them into a new document that you can then print out so that you can grab from different decks that you have and put together, as I said, a xeriscape bed or a vegetable garden bed or a shade garden bed and share that out broadly. But that's the process for generating any kind of plant label. The important takeaway from my perspective is recognizing that 81% of the people who visit our gardens as a whole have a computer in their pocket that can unleash tremendous amounts of information and communicate much more effectively than we could without a Ward Upham hologram at the entrance.
Kevin, we have a couple of questions.
Yes.
One, I've repeated the website for the QR code generator, which is qrstuff.com.
Stuff.
The other question is, what about copyright issues with the photos?
I do not know. Honestly, it's one of those things where you're going to have someone who's concerned about the copyright of the picture that they put onto the internet. I try to avoid ones where there is some private photographer's world, but honestly, I don't see anyone A, finding it, and B, coming after us because there's no deep pocket here. We're trying to highlight their work, and it's just for a limited sign. Now, as we start looking at other documents, I found we like to defer to the .edu or .gov documents rather than something that's been generated by someone else out there. And I think if you stay within the land-grant universities and the Master Gardener community, those documents should be available.
If I can also chime in on that, there's a tool you can use on a Google search, possibly also on the Bing, where if you go over to tools, you have the option of choosing only photos that are in the commons, so to speak. And there's various different types of photos that you can search for. So if you want to use it for something you're concerned about copyright, go to that tools in the Bing or Google search and choose a commons photograph or one that's been approved for common use.
Yeah, that is a great tip, Sharon. Thank you for that, because I'm more
Okay.
about,
Mary Ellen here, and I'm a retired lawyer, and I'm taking classes in this, CLEs. And if you quote me and get sued, it's not my fault. But if Tom's right, if it's from a like from K-State or the Missouri, if it's from a publicly funded site, it's okay. But also, if you're just using it for personal use, so if you want to be really fancy and do your own personal garden, no problem. And if you're using it for other purposes, but you're not making money off of it, it's probably okay.
Thank you for that, Mary Ellen, because that's the perspective I was looking at. Is I really would I would not want to be the photographer who went after the master gardeners because they were using one of his pictures.
Right, but if he captures or she captures this amazing once in a lifetime picture of a butterfly
Right.
and copyrights it or something. You don't want to go out and sell it out from under him.
Yes,
Either. I mean, they've got their rights, and
absolutely.
what they say.
And as I said, I think Sharon's solution is the best, but I also think we're not selling it, so I don't think we're the target for most of those activities.
There's another question in the chat box, but I'm not sure. It says, can Kevin go back to picking out the paper format?
Picking out the paper format. Let's go back.
That was me, and I see you've got it on where the type of paper you're going to print it on, 4 to a page, and I kind of lost that somewhere.
There it is.
But when you're in that QR stuff, can you pick like 4.5 by 5.5, 4 1/4, whatever that is?
The QR stuff is just going to generate the QR code, which will then be a little image that you can then manipulate to fit on the page as appropriate. So when I'm looking at this is an active PowerPoint presentation I'm looking at now. So there's the QR code. I can make it bigger or smaller based upon what QR stuff provided.
Go back to that page where you were putting 4 different pictures and names and all that. I don't know how you got to the 4 setup. That's what I was kind of asking.
I just got a standard PowerPoint slide, 8.5 by 11, and put it in. I will send out a blank one of these
Okay.
to everyone. I'll include in this presentation as just one more slide that you can then copy into your own PowerPoints to drop in as the template. As I said, you can do it in Word as well. And I actually started in Microsoft Word, but I didn't find it as easy to manipulate things the way I wanted to as with PowerPoint. So these, and what you'll see is these lines are movable too. So they're just in there to keep me honest.
Okay, there's a lot of comments going on. I think I'm getting my answer.
Okay.
Someone said that looking for the Avery label number, which is probably true, that would work. And then Sharon said you'll put it all together and send out the information.
Yeah, the able label is 8383. And I do like to trim them a bit because they just barely fit long ways, and the height wise that you need to trim them a bit. And I like to have a nice border that when they're laminated, it gets sealed against the weather. And we now have had ones for over 2 years that have weathered for the 2 years. We print them at the Douglas County Fairgrounds because it's a laser printer rather than an inkjet printer. And that laser printer is using a toner that doesn't degrade in ultraviolet light. I would caution you to spend a lot of money doing it on an inkjet printer, because I would fear that 2 years from now they would all be white. The laser printers have held up very well over the 2 years that we've had actively getting weathered. Other questions, Sharon? I'm not monitoring the box.
No, that's all the questions in the chat box that I've seen.
All right. Well, if that is the case, as I said, I would urge you all to think not just about plant labels, but about any of the things that we have available as information sources for our clients, customers, visitors, and recognize that the more we engage them successfully through multiple different medias, the more information we're able to provide that they are asking for, the more likely we are to have them return. And as now that you're aware of them, as you look for those little boxes, you will see them everywhere. I've driven down the highway where I've seen ones on the side of a truck that literally are 3 by 3. Because they know that there are people who will bring up their smartphone. They shouldn't, but they do, and scan that company's logo. I urge you all, if you're really good at the things that you do and you want to do a tutorial, to do it, upload it to YouTube. This presentation is going to be edited and uploaded to YouTube, and I'll have it out there for anyone who wants to revisit all these steps. So I probably should have told you that, well, we said we were recording, but it will be available, and it'll be there for you to back it up and go forward. And hopefully there was enough granularity in my presentation that you'll be able to duplicate this activity. Finally, as you get better at it, you're not going to find that it's all that difficult, and it will let you get out into the gardens and enjoy what we all like in the gardens, the dirt.